Hey guys, today we're doing something a little bit different. I wanted to sit down and talk about my thoughts regarding creativity and its role in science and STEM, because this is something that I've thought a lot about recently and have kind of explored a lot in my journey, as a YouTuber. So just bear with me. I did make notes, so I hopefully stay on topic, but we're just gonna have a chat today, basically. Sponsored by Brianna Thoughts. My thoughts on creativity in science and STEM. A lot of this stems from the differences between me and my husband's educational backgrounds. Because my husband has a degree in industrial design, so he's really creative, really talented, really creative. The man can draw like nobody's business. He makes products He's so talented, and I'm very impressed. And contrastly, I never considered myself to be very creative, which some of you may look at. A lot of the things I do on this channel are art projects or thinking outside of the box, and you're like, what do you mean she's not creative? She's sewing clothes. She's making outfits based on women scientists. But my insecurity in being creative all comes from how schools teach what creativity is. And growing up, creativity to me in school was always linked with, are you good in art class? And I was terrible in art class. I can't draw. I can't really paint. The one unit we did on pottery, terrible. Most of the time in art classes, most of what you do is visual art, so drawing, painting, sketching, etc. And if you're not good at that, you're considered to not be good at art. And if you're not good at art, when you start to get to middle and high school, where art is no longer a class that you have to take, you can take other classes, you don't take art because you were told you're bad at it. And then I think you just think that you're not creative. I think you also get told you're not creative in public education when you're really good at math and science. And I was really good at every other subject in school except for art. Not that I ever failed art, I just would not, I can't draw. I wouldn't consider myself, I got a passing grade because you can't punish kids for being crappy at drawing in third grade. And I was really good at every other subject, and I especially really liked science and math. And when I got to middle school, I didn't take art because I was bad at art. I took band because I played the clarinet. When I got to high school, I didn't even take band. I took extra math and science classes, and I went to a special math and science school, and I got a lot of college credits for math and science, and I did a lot of math and science. And I just never thought that I was creative because I wasn't good at art. Even though I was in band, I was yeah, I can play the music that's put in front of me, but I can't create my own music. I'm not a creative. And when I got to college a little bit, grad school a little bit more, and most importantly, when I met my husband, I realized maybe I am creative, and maybe that was really important in my science. So I was taught how to knit, crochet, and sew all when I was in second, third, fourth grade by my babysitters and by my mom, just because that was cool. I was oh, I can make my own stuffed animals? I want to learn how to sew. Oh, I can make stuff? I want to learn how to do that. And did them a little bit, and then really took them back up again in COVID. That's where I got a lot more into sewing my own clothes, into knitting, into crocheting, and realizing for the first time, I might actually be good at this. And I might actually be able to come up with my own original ideas, not just following somebody else's pattern, which is still very impressive in of itself and still involves a lot of creative problem-solving skills. I don't even know where I'm at in this. So that was when I finally, kind of COVID, had the chance to learn how to be creative and learn that I actually did have creativity. And like I said, I met my husband. He's super creative, and he taught me that creativity is something a little bit different than what I thought. It doesn't just mean that you're good at drawing. If you're good at drawing, that's great. But it also has to do with creative problem solving, being able to think through problems, being able to come up with original, innovative ideas. These all fall under what creatives can do like together. And as we all know, like innovation is very important in science and STEM. If you don't come up with new ideas, you're just repeating what everybody else has been doing for like all of history, and you don't discover anything new. And there were a couple of times like in college that I started to maybe understand, hey, maybe I do have some of that like innovation in me, that creative thinking in me. There are 2 times that stand out. So one was when I was an undergrad. I was working in a sea star marine biology lab. I did research on sea star larvae and how they reacted in different environmental conditions. And my advisor invited me to write this grant that was funded by a like subsection of NASA. And nobody in my lab had ever gotten this grant. Very few people in the biology department had gotten this grant, because like the missions of NASA and biology, specifically sea star larvae, seem pretty far apart from one another. That's fine. I had this really good idea to use NASA satellite data on water salinity and temperature and other like metrics that NASA has satellite data on to backtrack environmental conditions that had occurred and understand how those environmental conditions would have affected the sea star larvae and their population sizes. And the sea stars I was specifically studying were keystone species, which, according to NASA's like information I found on their website, NASA cared about keystone species and tracking keystone species. So I could use satellite data from NASA to track the population growth of a keystone species and connect the two together. And that's what I wrote my grant proposal on, with that idea. And I got it funded! I actually got it funded over like a couple people in the chemistry department who were used to getting that grant. And it was really exciting, all because I had this really creative, out-of-the-box idea for how to connect NASA and marine biology. Another example that stands out to me is when I was in grad school, one of the techniques I used for instrumentation, you basically spotted your sample onto these mesh cards and you had to wait for it to dry, and then you'd put it in front of the machine and it would analyze what was in your sample. And the company, when we bought this original machine, sent us little trays, or one little tray, for you to put your card down to dry on so it wouldn't touch the table. And that was great. We had one of them, but I had to run like 15 samples. I couldn't wait for one by one of them to dry to use them. And to buy another, it was literally like this big. It was made out of plastic. To buy another one was like $200, because science sometimes and companies are stupid. And I was like, this is stupid. I'm not making my advisor spend $200 a piece on little tiny plastic trays. I know how to 3D design a little bit. This is a really easy shape to 3D design. So I 3D designed it, and Purdue actually had both a metalworking shop, a 3D printing shop, and a glass blowing shop where students could come and request new things to be made from there, fueling their creativity and innovation. So I made my 3D file, sent it to the 3D printer guy, and he printed out a whole bunch of these trays. All for however much it cost to 3D print them, which was way less than $200 a piece. And I didn't think really anything of it, that's what I was going to do. I wasn't going to spend $1,000 to get 5 of these trays when I could 3D print them. And one of my friends in the lab was like, that was a weird thing for you to do, because everybody else in this lab would have just complained to our advisor until he just bought them. And you were like, no, I can solve this problem myself. And there's another instance where I was like, oh, maybe I am creative and I have good ideas. And then nowadays, I make a lot of my own clothes. I fuse a lot of my own ideas with science, and I have come more into the idea that I am creative. That's crazy. Sorry. But I think that this kind of misunderstanding of what creativity is permeates throughout the public education system, and sometimes even into college, where we're not teaching kids how to creative problem solve. We're not teaching them how to think about something outside of the box, or how to look at things from a different angle. We just teach them to memorize information and spit it back out on tests. And anybody who isn't good at art isn't considered creative, and if you're good at science, you're not considered creative, or that it doesn't matter that you're not creative, you're good at science, so you don't need to be creative. But that's not true. If we think back into science history, some of the people I've talked about on this channel, what made them so successful was the very nature of their creativity. So Ada Lovelace, who I just recently talked about, was like able to think about computers and early computers in a different way because of her like abstract and poetic thinking. That was probably creativity instilled in her nature due to like who her parents were. Maria Sibylla Merian was literally a watercolor artist who turned into a naturalist observing insects. Like, I don't think Albert Einstein came up with a theory of relativity because he wasn't creative. Like, there was no way he wasn't, like, out there when he came up with, like, relativity, or, like, any of the people who worked with quantum mechanics were not just, like, out in left field, that's all right, whatever, out in left field going, oh, what if it did this? Because some of that stuff is legitimately crazy, and it would have taken somebody with a crazy mind to come up with it. So, creativity, innovation are both really key parts of science and STEM, and if you are in one of those fields or want to be in one of those fields and you don't think you're creative, that's probably not true. Creativity doesn't mean that you're good at art, that you can draw, that you did really great in art class and loved it. It means that you have the ability to look at problems in a different way, that you have the ability to overcome problems by the way that you think, and you have the ability to see past what other people can see. And that's really important in science, STEM, and honestly just all parts of life. So these are Brianna's thoughts on creativity and whether or not I'm creative. And I think I finally settled on the fact that I am. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like it, subscribe to my channel. I'll be back to posting more normal content for this channel next week. And as always, keep it sciencey!